we begin with breaking news tonight. Now, we have good news and bad news out of the Biden White House. All right, first, the good news. The most pompous and dishonest press secretary in American history. She will be gone at the end of the week. The bad news, her replacement is a full-blown tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist who thinks that many of her political opponents are racist, and we've got a full Hannity investigation into Karine Jean-Pierre coming up. But we begin tonight with this. The big guy, Joe Biden, his genius new plan to battle inflation. Take a look.
And I agree with what Chairman Powell said last week, that the number one threat is the strength, and that strength that we built is inflation. Look, I know you got to be frustrated. I know. I can taste it.
Inflation in this country, do you take any responsibility for your policies?
I think our policies help, not hurt. Think about what they say. The vast majority of the economists think that this is going to be a real tough problem to solve, but it's not because of spending.
I'm screaming at the TV, how have they helped, Joe? Now, since Joe has clearly lost any ability to communicate because of his cognitive decline, allow me to try to translate for him. There's no plan to curb inflation. By the way, it's not transitory either. There's no plan to lower gas prices. There's no plan to spur on economic growth. Or as Bloomberg reported, quote, inside the administration, there is a sense of frustration, doom, and some say magical thinking about inflation. Magical thinking? We're now on the verge of what is a devastating recession, coupled with record-setting inflation, and of course, on top of that, a supply chain crisis. And gas prices, yep, they just hit a brand new record high along with diesel prices. Now, the stock market is plunging right before our eyes. Fortunes, I mean fortunes, are being lost by the middle class in this country and people on fixed incomes in this country. That means their pensions, retirement funds, 401ks, they're getting wrecked in the market. There's a nationwide shortage of baby formula. And the White House is thinking about the economy in a magical way? Well, it's time for heads to roll. Joe's economic and energy policies, they're nothing but a complete and utter disaster. Biden's inflation is now costing you, the average American household, over $5,200 annually. And new numbers out today show the average American is paying $2,000 more per year just for gasoline. But nothing is going to change because the Democratic Party is ruled by socialists that are all part of this religious climate alarmist cult, and they will never retreat from their radical agenda. I don't see that ever happening. They don't seem to care if you, the American people, suffer. They don't care if the country implodes, so long as the system is fundamentally transformed the way they want and capitalism becomes a thing of the past. And according to them, we all must pay for our sins against Mother Earth and beg Iran and Venezuela and OPEC to produce the oil we could be producing ourselves. So no matter how high gas prices go, Biden's not going to open up drilling and fracking. He's not going to greenlight the Keystone XL pipeline. The Alberta premier said we'd be getting 900,000 barrels of Canadian oil a day. Had he let that continue, it'd be finished by now. And no matter how bad inflation gets, Joe's not going to stop spending either.
So I've been telling you that what is coming is, as Jamie Dimon from J.P. Morgan Chase said yesterday, he has said in his quarterly reports that storm clouds are gathering. He changed that yesterday. He said, these aren't storm clouds. This is a hurricane. You better batten down the hatches. A hurricane, a financial hurricane is coming. And it only makes sense. You cannot have this country paying $6 and $7 a gallon for gasoline. You cannot have a transportation sector that runs on diesel fuel that is paying $6, $7, $8, $10 a gallon for diesel. It doesn't hold. You can't have food, as the USDA said yesterday, that take all of the inflation from the last 2 years and double it And that's what you'll be facing in September or October. That's the USDA. So, gosh, that sounds like a crisis, doesn't it? Sounds like an energy crisis. Sounds like a food crisis. A climate crisis. You know, climate, that's this generation's World War II. It's an existential threat. It's an emergency. A money crisis, as your dollar is just devalued more and more. There'll be a housing crisis. People won't be able to live in their houses. What to do. Homelessness crisis. I just have to throw this in because I don't even know what it means anymore, but you know they will say that there's an infrastructure crisis, that we have to upgrade our infrastructure because it's an emergency. I don't even know what it means. Most likely it means just funneling that money to Biden children. There's going to be a crime crisis. There's a shooting crisis. An emergency in every place but Chicago. It's an emergency. You don't think it could happen? Let me give you two things. Australia's parliament, South Australia's parliament, has just declared a climate emergency, which they say, now with the formal declaration of a climate emergency, the focus from the state government must be on building our state's capacity to tackle the emergency ahead of us. Now, the conservatives in Australia are like, yeah, but you haven't taken just common sense measures. You haven't done things that, right? Does that sound familiar? In Seattle, because they're now so woke, they've stopped investigating all rapes because they were reimagining the police, and they don't have enough police to go find the rapists. So if you've been raped in Seattle, don't call us. It's all headed toward national emergency. And I urge you to look up the executive orders. I urge you to look at how every single cabinet member has changed the administration and what they oversee to all re-gear towards justice and equity and climate emergencies. Everything.